And we are live.
Great. All right, we'll call the meeting to order here at 9:31, and I will turn it over to Elizabeth to do a roll call.
Thank you. Brian Lewis, Chair.
Here.
Gayla Bechtel.
Here.
Janet Clow.
Present.
Miles Conley. Orlin Guerrero Ortiz. Ruth Hamilton.
Present.
Matt O'Reilly.
Present.
Ike Pino. John Salazar.
Here.
You do have a quorum, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And forgive me, this is maybe my first formal meeting leading for the Pledge of Allegiance. Do I run us through that?
Yes.
Great. So Pledge Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. I'm sorry?
I'm just following you.
Okay.
I'm just saying it.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Sorry. Here. Okay, approval of agenda. Did anyone have any comments on the agenda, or were there any changes that needed to be made to the agenda?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Staff has no changes.
Great. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda as provided?
So moved.
Member
Mr. O'Reilly, Member O'Reilly has his hand up, Mr. Chair.
Mr. O'Reilly.
Mr. Chair, I would like to make a suggestion of a change to the agenda. Right now, at the very end of the meeting, staff is going to talk about estimated fund balances. And I just think like that would be more helpful to us to know what our fund balances are before we vote on some of the action items. So I would move to approve the agenda with staff communications on fund balances moved to the beginning of the meeting.
Mr. O'Reilly, that would be after approval of the minutes. Is that correct?
Yes.
I would make a motion to approve the agenda with that amendment. Miles?
Mr. O'Reilly made the motion already. Mr. Conway, would you like to second?
Yeah, that's what I meant. I would second that motion.
Great. I
You-
think,
And we need to do a roll call vote,
Yeah.
Mr. Chair?
will you do a roll call for us?
Yes, sir. Gayla Bechtel,
Yes.
Janet Clow,
Yes.
Miles Conway,
Yes.
Orlin Guerrero Ortiz,
Yes.
Ruth Hamilton,
Yes.
Matt O'Reilly,
Yes.
John Salazar.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Next up, approval of the minutes. Did everyone have a chance to review the May 13th minutes? Does anyone have any comments or proposed changes? Hearing none, is there a motion to?
Member Guerrero Ortiz has her hand up, Mr.
Oh,
Chair.
my apologies.
I was only going to say I'm going to recuse myself because I didn't stay for the whole meeting.
Thank you. Is there a motion to accept these minutes?
I'll move.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. Elizabeth, for a roll call.
Gayla Bechtel,
Yes.
Janet Clow,
Yes.
Miles Conway,
Yes.
Orlin Guerrero Ortiz,
I'm abstaining.
Ruth Hamilton,
Yes.
Matt O'Reilly,
Yes.
John Salazar.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. Let's move to our next agenda for the recent change to review the financials and estimated fund balances. I don't know who I should turn that over to What is that?
I can speak on that, Chair,
Thank you.
and I'm going to share my screen here. It's okay. Can you see my screen? Should be item 6A.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So let me preface all this by just saying that Carlos did an extraordinary amount of work on all this, and unfortunately left the city without really being able to train one-on-one. So I did my best to pour through multiple spreadsheets and reports and so forth to summarize this for you. And my knowledge of this is only so extensive, but what you see on here, these were annual reports that finance has provided for us. You may have seen some of this in May, or Carlos may have presented some of this to you. But what this shows you is for the fiscal year, what we collected in total fees over how many applications and what the average, I just kind of broke that out because I thought it might be useful. The average fees collected in total based on that, on the applications. So these are the total fees collected on these various years. And we did get finance to run for calendar year 2020 what we had collected, but we didn't have applications and so forth. I'm going to just kind of keep moving unless somebody has a question. So this next one was a calendar year, or a calendar year report for this year. Fire, police, parks, and road. And it shows you the various types of development, the various types of development and the fees collected, or what the fee was and what was paid. You do see this one negative down in here. This is an error in the report. When we went into EnerGov to verify whether or not, in fact, there were some fees not collected here, we found that they were. So you can kind of disregard this, and that kind of came to light as the packet had to be put together.
If I may interject,
Please.
Chair.
Please.
Lee, was that is that discrepancy rectified in Munis or not? Do we know that?
It is, as I understand it. I don't have access to Munis, but when you go into EnerGov anyhow, it does show as fully paid.
Right, I assessed it and collected the fees, so I'm aware of that. I just want to make sure that I think we have that coordinated with finance. If that's something Amanda Insidious needs to look at, just let me know. Otherwise, I'm just checking in on that.
Okay.
Thanks.
Making a note. And moving on, I'm pretty sure you guys have all seen this through Carlos last time. Unfortunately, finance was not prepared to offer more updated information at this point. Like I said, I'm pretty sure you have seen all these totals and there's nothing new here. But this does show what should be the available balance in the various types of funds and a total balance here.
And just so I'm understanding this correctly, that's as of June 30, 2020. So we're a
That
bit
is
stale.
correct.
But I don't think
We did not get any more recent information.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe we've paid significant or any funds, recently, right? So these balances shouldn't be significantly off. I get that more money could have come in, but it's not like we've spent 7 million in the last year.
That would be correct. And perhaps some of the staff members who have requests can speak to that better than me. That is one of the things that out of all of Carlos's material is one of the most difficult to glean is what has been spent where and when. And the reports I have access to don't really detail that. I know you guys approved a number of things on May 13th, some expenditures. Another staff member might be able to speak for any funds that were approved and spent in the recent past better than I could.
Let me turn it over to Regina. Maybe you have some thoughts on this, and then I'll get to you, Member Orlin Ortiz.
Thank you so much, Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you so much, Chairman, members of the CIAC committee. I'm Regina Wheeler, the Public Works Director. And yes, this is so the Public Works was notified by Carlos Gamora about 2 years ago that we really needed to be utilizing the impact fees more efficiently. And so since then, Public Works project administrators and capital projects have been pursuing allocations from the,
From the what?
sorry, I froze over here, so I hope you can still hear me. From the impact fee fund. A number of projects have been funded using impact fees, and there does need to be a much tighter linkage between this sort of balance reporting and sort of the encumbered amounts that have been approved by the CIAC. So I would say that, yeah, their funds are being spent much more rapidly than they had been over the past, say, 10 years. Probably quite a bit of these funds that you see may be encumbered actually now for projects. And so I think that would be that staff should really bring you an accounting of all the projects that have been allocated funding over the past 2 years so that you can be clear about what is really left remaining unspoken for. But if that helps at all, that we have been funding important growth parks and roads projects with the impact fees over the last couple of years. Although I'm sure certainly as you see here, the full $5 million balance of the FY20 unaudited balance is not encumbered or spent. But we can give you some better reporting in the future.
Yeah. Okay, that it's good that we're spending it, but also for me invites questions about what we can and can't approve at this point if we don't know what our funds are. But let me turn it over to Member Guerrero Ortiz. You've been waiting for a while, so I'll turn it to you.
Yeah, no, I think this is a really important issue in that this is an unaudited number and it's not current. And so I don't know when our next meeting is to occur, but I think prior to that next meeting that this needs to be addressed. And I don't know how to push this issue, but I read the minutes from the last meeting, which I missed the end of, and Ken Shanahan was commenting on the fact that this is kind of unacceptable behavior on the part of the finance department, as far as not keeping accurate or current records on this. So I don't know what we need to do to make sure that before we have another meeting that this is addressed and taken care of, and that we end up with current numbers. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, thank you for those comments. Member Clow.
Yes, I have a question of Lee. Lee, you seem to sort of indicate that perhaps, well, you weren't able to pull together what had been spent. Is finance going to be able to pull together what has been spent? Are there records that will establish that?
Yeah, I mean, certainly they have the information. We just did not get it. Carlos, like I said, in his file, there are innumerable spreadsheets, and some of that information might be there. Just our current staffing situation, we put this meeting together as best we could because we knew y'all wanted to have one, and then Public Works needed us to try and get some of their things approved before the end of the year. But under all the circumstances, there just simply wasn't time for me to dig into all that. We did the best we could do here. We made repeated requests of finance, and we simply did not get what we asked for.
And does finance indicate when they'll be able to get to this? I mean, the newspaper today said they're going to be late on the audit again. So I am assuming that that department is still having the problems they've been having, which I believe is probably one of the reasons why they haven't gotten to this.
So probably a fair guess. I would let Jason answer for me on that, I think.
I'll just chime in, Lee. This is Noberg. So the staff has reached out to finance numerous times over the last several months. Finance was able to provide some audited reports, which I believe Lee included in the packet. This is our best estimate at this. As of 6/30/20, this was what the balances were. And staff feels comfortable that the requests that are in front of you will not exhaust any of the funds that are available, and that there is sufficient funding available for the requests that will be in front of you today.
Yeah, thank you. If I may, thank you, Noah. I agree with that. And I've been working with Mary McCoy since around the middle of July, beginning of August, on nailing these numbers down. And she was intending to provide the audited report for fiscal year 20 by the end of August. And she was never quite able to get to it. I spoke to her on Saturday, and she told me she was still trying to get it to us. And if she wasn't able to, that I needed to tell you all that finance is just not prepared to offer for this meeting, but they are working on it, and we'll get it to you as soon as it's available. And that's the best we've got.
Let me make just one more comment, and then I'll turn it to you, Member O'Reilly. I wonder if, as we go through these requests, that we put it contingent to confirmation of those funds being available. Sounds like we're working on it. Just would hate to, and I know staff is confident, but if we can't even ballpark what these numbers are, it feels a bit maybe out of bounds for us to approve something. But I will defer to the committee at large. So, Member O'Reilly, I'll turn it to you. Maybe he's frozen.
I still, Member Klaus still has another question. I'm
Okay.
wondering if, the 3% that can be used for administrative cost, are there any funds available from these funds that could be used to hire somebody to do the accounting?
So we actually, thank you, Chair and Member Clough. That's a good question. We've allocated the administrative costs to bring on a full-time CAC planner. We just finished interviews this week. We've made a job offer to an individual who has background in analytical and statistical, as well as planning skills, and degrees to back that up as well. So we've made an offer. That person has not accepted the offer. We were hiring for this a few months ago, and we made an offer, and unfortunately the person accepted another position before we were able to make an offer. So we had to re-advertise for this position, but there will be a full-time person who will be working solely on CIAC and will be the point contacts. That's what the administrative costs are being used for.
Can any of these other funds be used to hire somebody to do a contract, an outside contract with somebody to do the accounting?
We haven't explored that. That's a good suggestion. But I think it would still be contingent on the finance department being able to provide information to that individual to do the accounting. And that's where we're having issues with getting information from finance.
And my guess is that if finance could provide the information, this is a pretty quick scheduled update, but we just need the raw data, and we're not getting it. So that's frustrating. I recognize that. Member O'Reilly, you had a question, but you froze.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Wanted to go back to Member Guerrero-Ortiz's comment about what this committee can do. This is an ongoing problem. You heard that from Kim Shanahan, but it's been going on for years. All of this information is in the AS400 system at the city. It's in there when someone pays for a building permit for an impact fee eligible item. It's entered into the system. The information is there. This is not something that has to be created. It's in the chart of accounts.
I believe he froze again.
Mr. Chair, would you like me to stop screen sharing or do you want me to leave this up? Just curious.
Maybe just leave it up for a bit longer in case people have further questions on it. In the meantime, let me turn it over to Regina. You have comments here.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Chairman, members of the committee. I'm going to stop my video so I don't freeze up. It seems to be happening. So Public Works and Finance partner very closely on tracking all capital funds and capital funding of projects. Public Works is the department that has been bringing forward the request for allocation of impact fees to Public Works projects. We do have documentation of all of the approvals, as well as the bars that we subsequently execute through either governing body or city manager to move the budget from the CIAC revenue stream to the Public Works capital project expenditure stream. So we can certainly help, and we do partner closely with finance on reporting on all capital funding, including legislative funding and impact fees and GRT bond allocations. And so I believe that within a couple of days, we could provide you with a very clear reporting of the allocations that have been approved by CIAC over the past couple of years and the status of those allocations.
That would be hugely helpful. You know, even if it hasn't been spent yet, it's good to know what we've agreed to spend, right? So we kind of need to keep track of both numbers, I think. So maybe put that on the to-do list. If you could send that to the committee at some point, that would be awesome.
And I think it's important to note, Chair, that there has been allocation of funding approved in the past couple of years or 3 years now, because we've been in 2 years of COVID. And throughout my tenure working with the CIAC, that has not been utilized. So it's been allocated for a project, but they haven't moved forward with the project for maybe it wasn't a priority project after the administration, or there was a lack of funding to finish the funding from what the difference was from what the CIAC funded towards it. Case in point, we have the fire station was approved a few years ago. That funding was allocated. It was never moved forward because they did not choose to move forward with the fire station. I anticipate it will move forward in the next year, but after this body approves funding, it is up to the person requesting it to take it to the next level, which is to the governing body, because this is a recommending committee. So, so I do want to put out there, there's been several projects that have had the funding allocated, but they have not utilized the funding yet.
Is there a statute of limitations on how long our approvals are good for, or is it indefinite?
I'm not aware, Chair. It's a good question. I'm not aware of how long the approvals are good for. I think once the table's amended to include a project and you draw down on that project, I think the approval stands until such time. So that just becomes a running tabulation to make sure that we don't just take the funding that was allocated somewhere else, right? So that is something that staff works on consistently. But I do echo the point of Mr. Logston that we have been low staffed. I don't want to make excuses here. I think this came up at the last meeting. We have had struggles with the finance department and their amount of personnel that can be devoted towards this. So we are doing the best we can with the information we were able to gather. Carlos did an excellent job and Lee did an excellent job. So that's why we're moving these requests forward. But that was one of the reasons that we moved this meeting, was to try to get finance to give us this information. And we kept bumping up against deadlines. So we kept moving this meeting in order to accommodate finance being able to provide the information.
Okay, thank you for that context. Member O'Reilly, should we try it again?
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry, I keep freezing. I'll just make it real brief. I really think that the city attorney needs to speak with the finance director and explain to the finance director the legal requirements that this committee has under state statute to recommend. We may be a recommending body, but it's a required recommendation under state law. I don't see how we can allocate monies to these various projects when our balance is 18 months old. And we are being told, and we know that we've already voted to spend some of this money or allocate some of this money to certain projects. I'm not sure how staff knows for sure that and can say that we have enough money for some of these things, but without knowing what the balances are. But I appreciate everything Lee's done to try and land use has done to try and pull us together in Carlos's absence. But to be honest, this is a problem that goes far, extends in the past before COVID and years before that with various finance directors. So I would just ask that whoever the staff person is, maybe Jason, that'd be you as the land use director, to reach out to the city attorney and try and impress upon them to speak with the finance director about this. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for those comments. Jason, you've been waiting for a while. Turn it back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So yes, I'd like to wholeheartedly agree with Member O'Reilly's concern, and then Regina's. She started to talk about a solution that I want to talk about a little bit, if you don't mind. And then, Mr. Chair, you were speaking of how potentially the CIAC could help with this issue. So obviously it's systemic. As Member O'Reilly mentioned, there is a legal requirement. We have severe capacity issues. So those three things, I think I just want to point out, I don't think this is none of this is a mystery to any of us, right? We just need to figure out how to tackle it. So I apologize. I had a train of thought and I lost it. Oh yeah, so I think on Director Wheeler's note, the CIAC really, fundamentally, I believe it belongs in Public Works. And I don't know I don't want to have that debate now, obviously, but the fact that it's in land use, I think causes some challenges inherently. And I understand that, we're on the front end and Public Works is more on the back end, but I think Regina is in she's better positioned, like she noted, to understand these balances and to be able to extract them and give, high quality data for y'all to work with. So it seems like we really need to work towards a team effort in the future. We're hiring this planner, CIAC planner, and I would like them to be, if I have anything to say about it in the new year, we'll see how that goes. But, I envision this person as managing impact fees from cradle to grave, right? When projects come in, they assess the fees, they process impact fee credit agreements, they handle all the data and the interactions with CIAC, and then they work with Public Works to, get the funding approved and the resolutions, et cetera, that need to happen to put the funding in place. So they manage all of that, and that's definitely, that will be a full-time job. And maybe there's an option where we can share the funding with Public Works to split the salary of that person. Anyway, I think that's the next big move that we need to make. And we had a good candidate. It ended up being an unsuccessful hire, but now Noah has just interviewed another person that he feels like can do the job. So we need to get that person on board and bring them up, and go from there and hopefully improve the situation. But I agree that we're in a challenging situation right now, and maybe Regina can't help. And I agree that I need to talk to the city attorney and try to attack this challenge from that direction as well. I think that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you for those comments. Yes, if we knew the balance as of 6/30/2020 and we knew how much we had already approved, we could even kind of have a general sense, right? We could say half of it's been approved. We know that, another half hasn't been approved. So we could operate under those guidelines, even if the money hadn't been spent yet. But we don't have that in front of us. So it does feel a bit tough to move forward with making recommendations without the information we need to do that. Member Clow, I'll turn it to you.
Yes, I'd suggest that we move forward, but that we preface it by saying, if there are, based on the fact that we don't have current financial information, if there are funds available, we've approved this project. Seems to me that for this fiscal year, there's 2.1 million of fees collected. So it's I think there's probably definitely adequate fees available for the projects that are being requested now. But I would also like to point out that I think that we need to be on record. And I think by maybe having the chair write a letter to the city attorney, maybe CCing the mayor or writing to the mayor or something. But rather than just being on record with these minutes, I think we need to be on record by correspondence that this is problematic, that I personally feel vulnerable in terms of carrying out the responsibility, financial or the statutory legal responsibilities of this committee. So I think that rather than us just voicing it where it goes in the minutes, I think it's time to probably do something in writing so that we're all protected. And that we're not just sitting back. So it doesn't appear we're just sitting back and not pushing it. I would also request that staff look to see, again, if any of these funds can be used to hire an outside person who would arrive at the city, and the finance department would have to start working with them. I mean, I would assume they could get access to the records and start pulling the information together. Again, based on what I read in the paper today, it looks like the finance department is still overwhelmed, and that this is on the list of priorities, and that I'm not optimistic that based on what I've been hearing has occurred over the last number of years, things are going to be rectified anytime soon.
Thank you for those comments. I agree with you. I think we need to make our voices heard, but let's go through. We got a lot of people with their hands raised. We'll come back to that. Romella, you've had your hand raised for a while.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Advisory Committee. My name is Romella Gloriosa Moss, and I am the Senior Projects Administrator with Public Works, Roadway, and Trails. We were told a year ago that we, project administrators, need to monitor our expenditures. So I started managing roadway and trails projects in October 2020. October 2019. And our roadway and trails request as of today, the funds allocated and transferred to our projects as of today is 3,982,922. So we have a request for $275,000 and $174,000 for road impact fees and rail impact fees. That comes to $4,432,711. So with remaining funds of with $7,291,874 as of June 30, 2020, that will leave us $2,859,163 remaining in road impact fees. That's just, I just want to let you know that we are monitoring our expenditures very closely, and I believe this is exact or close to exact. And okay. This is what remains in road impact fees. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And I don't know if other people had feedback, but just as a reminder, if you're not speaking, try to remain on mute. So if I understood that correctly, it sounds like we have over 2 million for sure left in roads. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Great. That's a good figure for us to know. Member Conway.
Well, thank you. I was trying to follow along with Ms. Gloriosa Moss, but she just rattled off numbers that I don't think we even have on our sheet. So this sort of deepens the confusion. If I don't know why there's an echo. This somebody perhaps has a phone and a computer on, but I hope it's not too distracting. But yeah, I think that to echo what Chair Lewis was saying, you know, we've only had like 2 meetings since June 30th, I believe that's correct. So I don't think the math on what we've obligated going forward would be too much to ask. I mean, probably in the time we did this, we probably could have just said, okay, everybody open up the agendas from July of 20 and the last meeting we had and add it up, and we would have ballpark numbers to work with, because I think we're having to work with ballpark numbers. What I think is more elusive is what's still encumbered. You know, what is still projects that are in the pipeline that we have that. And to one of the members asked, like, how long is our approval good for, or the city's governing body approval good for? Have we encumbered stuff going back 5 years? I don't know if any staff folks can answer that. So those are thoughts that are on my mind. I don't think they have any impact on what we're about to do here, really. But I would be willing to say, we're closing, you know, I would second a motion to close this meeting and be willing to meet on December 27th or 8th, you know, and just like, you show me what's encumbered and show me what's in our true balances, and we'll meet real quick and we'll go through the agenda and approve these projects before the calendar year. I would be willing to do that. Beyond that, I would ask, my question to staff and why I had my hand raised, are there any projects that are in danger of losing matching funds federally if we don't act before the end of the year? Because those would be the projects that I would say, hey, it's reckless, but we're going for it. We're gonna send our recommendation up to the governing body to fund these projects out of the CIP fund. So that's my one question, and I'll see if I can figure out how to take my hand down. But my question is, are there any projects that are on our agenda today that are in danger of losing matching funds if we don't act before the end of the year?
Anyone from staff able to answer that?
Ms. Gloriosa Moss has her hand up.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
we need to move forward and hiring all the consultants for all our projects, roadway and trails. This funding agreement needs to be, we need to implement or hire the consultants by January or February next year. And so we need this funding, the matching funds for all our projects that we are requesting CIAC funds. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Conway, do you feel like your question has been answered?
Yeah, and I'm glad it came from Rhodes, because Rhodes has more numbers on this sheet I'm looking at than anyone else.
Okay. Member Hamilton, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. I just wanted to support Member Clow's comments that members of this committee as city volunteers are vulnerable, and that, you know, talking about a subject that sounds like it's been talked about for over a year is unacceptable in any entity. So yes, I agree that you as the chair should send a letter immediately to the city attorney and the mayor, and I'll be happy to put my signature on it as well. This needs to be moved off, because everything that this committee works on stands for all of the priorities that Santa Fe needs to have solved, and seems like we're stuck, and that ain't right.
Yes, agreed. And I think for all of us who've been appointed by different city council, members, that's a good place for all of us to reach out to as well, because they'll probably have even more impact than maybe any of us do directly, right? So I'm on board with that. I will certainly be reaching out to Councilor Romero Worth, who appointed me, and I'm happy to figure out the best ways to move forward. But in the meantime, I also don't want us to sit on our hands. I want to see if there's stuff that we can do today, but maybe I'll turn it to the committee. Are people unwilling to vote on any of these projects, given the state of information we have, or given the, at least spoken numbers that we have over 2 million in roads? Do we feel comfortable moving forward?
Mr. Chair, you're muted.
Sorry, everybody has their hands raised, but I'm going to start with Jason.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Lee, do you happen to have the roadway and trails impact fee allocation for FY21? I've got that pulled up that I could share with everyone. At least it's something. For some reason, I thought that was in the packet, but I think it may not have been.
I don't have that handy now.
Can you all see that?
Yes.
Yes.
I think this is as close as we can get with this meeting. And I think Director Wheeler had to sign off for a meeting with the mayor, but she could probably chime in, maybe Ramella can, but this does show the amounts allocated to some fairly large roadway and trails projects and the date approved.
But what this doesn't have is stuff approved before that has not been spent, correct? So we may have a large outstanding balance for something that hadn't been completed. We just don't have that information for things in 2020, 2019, and before.
I believe that's correct. And I think to Ramella's point, the impact fees for 2021 that were assessed is a very large number, and I understand all of your concerns, but I believe that the funding is there for all the current requests, as Mr. Burke indicated.
Okay.
I'm just sharing information with you all the best I can.
Appreciate that. I think we're all trying to get our arms around it as best we can.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep going down. So, Member Hamilton, you have your hand raised.
Am I on mute? Hold on. No, I'm not. Okay. Well, if we're not going to go forward with voting, I would like to have discussion of some of the reprioritization in table 80 on the roads section of this agenda, if that's possible.
I definitely think for non-allocation stuff, we should go through those.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a question? If there's not a motion on the floor right now to not move forward with on the action items that are listed.
Correct. So we can move forward with the action items then.
Okay.
Unless Member Conway, do you have something to say?
It was only that I think is that like $1.8 million, although we don't know it's encumbered in roads. Was that? And I appreciate, thank you, Director Klug, for pulling up a piece of data that we could all look at. Because I took that 3 million encumbered minus the 4.5 on our sheet. So, or maybe it wasn't quite.
Plus we collected more in 2021. So
I'll second it's not a motion. What you just said, like, yeah, I think we should move into the action items and look at them carefully. I think we have some reasonably useful information, at least on the roads.
Okay. Well, yeah, I'm trying to be conscientious of everyone's time. I appreciate us all going through that. I think it is important to get our arms around. I personally feel like, with the best of the knowledge that we have available today, there's likely funds to go through and decide whether or not we want to allocate for these projects. But the top priority going forward is getting real data and having as good of accounting as we can going forward. So let's move to action item A, which is the update IFCIP table 80. And I believe Ms. Glorioso Mas is going to speak to that one.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So at the CIAC meeting on May 13, the members requested the Public Works to update Table 80 in Impact Fees Capital Improvement Plan FY 2021-2027 with all the projects on the planned major road improvements 2021-2027. So Public Works added 6 road improvements projects to the list, namely Bishop's Lodge Road. They are all written in red. Guadalupe Bridge Rehabilitation, Harrison Road Sidewalk and Lighting, Pacheco Street Bicycle and Pedestrian Improvements, St. Michael's Drive Rail Trail Underpass. This project was formerly included in Table 81, Planned Park Trail Improvements, but this project is a roadway project. It's not a trail project, so we added it in Table 80, and the St. Michael's Drive Reconstruction Project. For intersection signalization improvements, we added Rail Trail, Paseo de Peralta, 2nd Street, Siringo Road, and Rodeo Road intersections. This was also included in Table 81. However, this is not a trail project. This is an intersection project. So we also updated the project cost estimates because the cost estimate in previous list was not updated since 2016. So the cost estimates were updated using current NMDOT unit prices, increasing the total cost of all projects from $59,510,000 to $119,760,000. That's all, Mr. Chair. I stand for questions.
Member Guerrero Ortiz.
Thank you. So this is only my second meeting, so I hope I'm not asking stupid questions. But I understand that these are projects that could potentially use impact funds that are derived from new development. And so I look at this list and wonder why we're looking at reconstruction projects in some of the older parts of our town. I mean, why are, Governor Miles reconstruction or St. Michael's Drive reconstruction and Guadalupe Street reconstruction and so on and so forth on this list, why wouldn't that come from some other fund? Why is those projects justified as being paid for by recent impact funds? Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Member Guerrero Ortiz, all these projects are funded by NMDOT. What we are seeking funding for is the matching funds. For example, the Guadalupe Street reconstruction, that's 95% funded by NMDOT. So impact fees roads is only 5% of the total project cost.
But I don't know how that's justified taking it from this fund. I mean, I understand that you're only looking for 5%. It's a fairly small number to grab a hold of a lot larger number from DOT. But how do we justify using impact funds for reconstruction in parts of our community that are not undergoing expansion due to new development?
Mr. Chair, Member Guerrero Ortiz, these reconstruction projects are undergoing expansion, growth and expansion. For example, the St. Michael's Drive reconstruction. So currently we have 6 lanes on St. Michael's Drive. The reconstruction will reconstruct the roadway into 4 lanes. We are going to use 2 lanes for pedestrian and bicycle lanes. this project was supported by resolution of the City Council in 2016 to develop St. Michael's Drive as an economic priority area. So we are experiencing a lot of growth in this section of St. Michael's Drive. So we believe we are eligible to obtain funding for matching funds from impact fees, road impact fees, because we satisfy that factor.
Okay, I'll just follow up with a statement, and it's not a question, but it's to the other board members, and just say that I don't necessarily agree with staff's position on that. And that I think that there's a serious question of whether or not some of these items that are listed should be appropriately used or should use impact funds. And I get staff's desire to use these funds. It's kind of an easy catch, but I would say that, you know, I'm rather uncomfortable, and to just, I mean, things that are just on there like bike lines and sidewalks, I mean, that's kind of vague. So I'm a little nervous about the whole list in general, but in some of the reconstruction projects, I'm very, at least right now, I have a lot of questions about it. And so I'm a little uncomfortable about voting for this table as presented.
Thank you for those comments. I do wonder if an argument could be made that, you know, they're a major, you know, St. Michael's in particular is a major artery within the city, and everybody uses that, or a lot of different, you know, depending on where the growth is, it becomes an important throughput for the city. But I hear those concerns, and just a clarifying question. I think we're approved. This table is not, we're not voting to do these projects. We're just approving whether or not these are appropriate projects to have on the list. Is that correct? I think that's we're not actually moving forward with these at this time.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Member O'Reilly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Real quickly, I completely agree with Member Guerrero Ortiz. I won't reiterate what she said because I have the same concerns. I think in addition to what we recommended earlier, that the city attorney speak with the finance director, I think the city attorney needs to instruct staff in the New Mexico Development Fees Act and what these fees can be used for. I'll have more to say to that when we get to item 5D, because I think there's an item in there that absolutely is not eligible for the use of roadway impact fees. But what we're talking about in this action item is the prioritization of roadway impact fee expenditures, which we asked for earlier this year. So my question to Ramela is, in the table 80 comparison that's included in the packet, there is a list of projects with a heading reprioritized. And so I have two questions. Is the list of projects here in order of their priority from the highest priority of the Public Works Department to the lowest priority? And also on the far right-hand side of that table, there are some little pluses and minuses numbers, and I wasn't sure what those are. But those are my two questions.
Board member, if I can just say, I actually put those tables together and added it to the end of the various, excuse me, other staff members' packets, just for something useful to look at. So Gloria didn't actually put this, or Ramela didn't actually put this together. I did, and I can tell you that the pluses and yes, the way I tried to order this was that these are in priority from top to bottom, or highest to lowest. And the little pluses and minuses basically tell you how far up or down the prior table those items went. And so then once again, items that were added are identified as new. So that's what the plus and minus is.
Thank you, Lee. I appreciate that. Ramella, I know that Lee put this table together. Do you agree with this list in order of priority?
Mr. Chair, sorry, I'm not wearing my glasses and I could not see it, but the one that I submitted to Lee is, it's not prioritized, it's alphabetized. Yes, so it's
Okay.
alphabetized, but all of these projects are ongoing. And so in terms of priority, Rufina, it's not ongoing. There's no funding for that. San Felipe Road, St. Michael's Drive reconstruction, and West Alameda reconstruction. Those are only the 4 projects that are not ongoing.
So, Mr.
Or
Chair,
no funding.
I understand. Mr.
Sorry,
Chair,
go ahead.
So again, disappointed. We asked for a list of priorities, not just for the Public Works Department to add new projects, but to give us a list of priorities. We asked for that at our last meeting. And now we're told that this list doesn't have priorities for Public Works.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. These are our priority projects for the year 2022 to 2027. So we are actively seeking funding for all these projects. So some of the funding is, we haven't gotten all of the funding that we need. But these are our priority projects for the five years. So this is not the we are working on all these projects as of now. So all these are priority projects, but I did not prioritize it by priority. This is alphabetized, but these are all priority projects for these 5 years. 2022, 2027.
I understand what you just said, but that's not what we asked for. And frankly, it's not helpful. First of all, nothing gets put on table 80 without the approval of this committee. So what I was wanting to know, and I think we had clearly expressed this in May, was we wanted to know which of these projects were most important or urgent for the city. You can't have a list of 20 priorities. One has to be most important. And we were asking the Public Works Department to tell us which of these projects they thought were most important. They can't all be equally important. Because I know in looking at this, I'm sure I have some opinions, and I'm sure other members of the committee have some opinions about which of these projects we should fund first, given the limited amount of roadway impact fee monies that we have. So that's what we were asking for. And I appreciate some of the other staff memos that we'll get to later, where they did actually do that, where they called out and they said, here are our top 3. So that's what I was looking for. At least that's what I was looking for back when we met. I'm not sure that staff is even able to tell us now, on the fly, which ones they think are most important. I just didn't want, as a committee member, to vote on what I thought was important myself without knowing what the city thought were the most important 2 or 3 projects. So that's all, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Member O'Reilly. I hear your opinion loud and clear, and I think it would be very helpful for us to have that. We are very behind, but let's try to move through this as effectively as we can. Ms. Hamilton, you've had your hand raised for a while.
Members Gutierrez, Ortiz, and O'Reilly have beat me to the punch, but I just want to support both of their comments wholeheartedly. That as I looked at Table 80, I was very distressed and disappointed. And I just feel like in order to go forward with it, I have to see the priorities, because you're right, you cannot have 20 priorities. And there are a few on here that are huge pain points for the city that I see have been lowered 4 and 5 points, which if that last column does show difference between the two, then maybe those have been lowered in priorities, and that causes me great worry. So I think that before we go forward, we have to see the city's priorities.
Yes, I want to clarify. I think that this table that we were looking at is alphabetical, so the movement is actually just moving from its prior spot to, so don't treat that at all as any sort of priority other than.
Yeah, apologies to the committee. I really thought that what I had received was a prioritized list. So yeah, just disregard that comparison page altogether.
I do think we may not want to, move forward with approving this updated priorities, given we don't have the priority list. Does anyone have a motion, or Member Clow? I can.
Yes, I have a motion. I move that we table this till the next meeting, and that at the next meeting, we have information provided to us as to how the order of priority of these projects, and that the 5, or I guess it's 6, items that the staff is requesting be added to the priority list, that we be provided in writing a detailed analysis as to why these projects qualify, giving state statute section 5-8-2 and city ordinance that pretty much complies with the state statute. So and I can see it takes a lot of thought and creativity, I think, because I think very possibly some of the St. Michael's projects could qualify, but it needs to be really thought through in terms of how, and that takes time and effort to think through why a project would be an expansion, as opposed to not just a repair, a maintenance, a modernization of an existing facility. But, St. Mike's is expanding, the population there is increasing. So it very well could be that it would qualify as expansion, but the reports that are provided really need to detail that, because I think that's really important information. It needs to be provided in the report. So I move to table with the requirement that when it's brought back to us, we have an order of prioritization, and that we have a detailed analysis as to how the new projects to be added to this list qualify as a priority, qualify under state and city ordinance.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Let's do a roll call. Or actually, I guess, are there any other comments on this before we do a roll call?
I have a comment, Mr. Chair, or a question. What exactly are you proposing to table?
Item A.
Item A will be.
Item 5A, okay.
This will be brought up again at the next meeting with the information as requested by Janet Clow. If there are new stuff in here, help the committee here understand how it fits within our purview and how it is part of expansion, right?
Thank you.
I just have a comment. This seems to be more about the lack of long-range planning. We can't prioritize because we haven't planned. And then also I have a question for staff or maybe anyone, in which order do we hear the projects? Are the projects already approved by city council and it's just the funding that's the question that's to us? Because we're not really approving the project is the way I understand this. Is that correct?
Chair, Commissioners, that is correct.
Mr. Chair, if I can add on that, all these projects were all these new projects were already approved by the governing body, and the funding agreement were already approved by the governing body. So, for example, for Bishop's Lodge, we are requesting to use impact fees for matching funds, and so all these projects are our priorities. I did not understand when this request was made on May 13. I did not understand that I need to have the priority ordered. I understood that my understanding was there were a number of priority projects that is listed in ICIP, different priority projects in SFMPO transportation plan, and different projects prioritized in IFCIP. So my understanding was to evaluate all those priority projects in these 3 planning documents and list the priority projects under IFCIP. And my understanding is we're listing the priority projects for the period of 5 years, not just fiscal year 2022. And 16 of these projects these projects are undergoing. 16 of these projects, we have funding and we need matching funds. That's all. Thank you so much.
Yes. Elizabeth, do you have a question?
Mr. Chair, I just want to remind the committee about procedurally that they need to, when folks' hands are up, they need to speak when the chair calls upon them, and not until the chair calls upon them, so we can stay orderly and not interrupt, please, other people who are speaking so I can get their statements in the minutes.
Thank you for that. Just one final comment there. I think we understand that all of these projects are important to the city. I think the request is, given we have limited funds that we can use, if not, which of these is, which is the A1 priority, A2, A3, we recognize all of them are important, but we can't do all of them, right? Because we don't have enough funding for that. So that is, I believe, the request of Member O'Reilly. There's still a motion on the floor that has been seconded.
You have 2 hands up, Mr. Chair.
Understood.
Member Hamilton and Regina Wheeler.
Thank you. I'm just wanted to remind everyone we still have the motion on the floor, so hopefully these are related to that.
Right.
Member Hamilton.
Yes, as I was listening to Ms. Glorioso Mas's justification for including some of these as follow-up to Member Gutierrez Ortiz's question, I underlined the words expanding, upgrading, updating, and I actually, because I'm a nerd, I downloaded the entire Development Fees Act, all 15 pages, and I read every single word a couple of times, trying to understand why some of these projects are on here, because the items under 585, items not payable by fee, are capital improvements, expanding, upgrading, updating. So I want to reiterate that when this list of priorities is put together, that staff and city attorney once again review the Development Fees Act and help us understand in Member Clow's suggested analysis the justification for using monies to expand, update, upgrade, improve capital improvements. Very, very concerned about that.
Thank you. Ms. Wheeler?
Thank you so much, Chairman, members of the committee. I just wanted to sort of highlight some of the things that Ramela Gloriosa Moss said, which is that there is extensive and diligent planning done for our roadway and trails projects. Much of that planning is driven by growth and projected growth. Those plans are encapsulated in governing body and transportation advisory committee adoption of transportation master plans. So not to be confused that there isn't diligent capital planning going on, and that the projects that you see coming your way are a result of that governing body approved and extremely diligent capital planning. The IFCIP is sort of a subset of that, which we're gaining our facility and expertise and consistency in updating for the CIAC to be clear about all that. We've been just recently asked actually to bring all of those plans to bear on the IFCIP, and that's what this work here was to do, and we'll be happy to review it and update it as directed and requested by the CIAC here today. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. I don't think any of us wanted to say that there hasn't been work or thought put into it. Just if it I don't live and breathe this every day. So if you can quickly just say, here's a project we want to add, here's how much it's going to cost, and here's why it fits within the purview of this committee, that makes our job doable. Without that, it's a bit tough for us to move forward. So I think the motion is to table this and revisit it at the next meeting. There's been a second. Can we do a roll call at this point? Or
Yes.
Member Hamilton, you still have your hand raised? Or maybe you... Okay. I think let's do the roll call.
Okay, Gayla Bechtel?
No.
No. Janet Clow?
But the vote is to approve the motion, right?
Approve the motion, yes.
Yes.
Which is to table it.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Miles Conway?
Yes, to table.
Orlin Guerra-Ortiz?
Yes.
Ruth Hamilton?
Yes, to table.
Matt O'Reilly?
Yes.
John Salazar?
Yes.
Chair Lewis?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. Member Guerrero Ortiz?
I would only suggest to staff that I think it's 5 items that you're adding, or 6 that you're adding to this table. When you come back, I would like verification that all 6 of those are justified under the Development Fees Act. Thank you.
That is included in the motion, Member Guerra-Ortiz.
Thank you very much.
Okay, let's move forward to action item 5B, which is the table 81. Ms. McDonald, yes, you're here. Turn it to you to talk us through this.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I also prepared an updated list based on the request. It is not prioritized, but I have highlighted what is changing based on our demands and needs and assessments as we do our capital planning. So you may want to table this as well.
Member O'Reilly.
Mr. Chair, I would move to table item 5B and for staff to bring this back with each of these items listed in order of their priority of for the project.
Thank you for that motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Salazar. Comments, Ms. Wheeler.
Thank you, Chairman. I hope I'm not being overly verbose today, but it's just a pleasure to begin to map this landscape with this new CIAC committee. So it's an interesting exercise these days to set priorities in a long-range capital plan. And some of the things to consider that really affect where the priorities need to be leveraged are things like we have asked the legislature this year for a couple $100 million. It is possible that we could receive $40 or $50 million out of legislative session this year. And some of those funds might be used to fund parks projects. So, and then there's the Infrastructure Jobs Act, which is expected to be providing additional road funding. And so it's an extremely dynamic landscape right now for, setting priorities for any long-range capital plan. And it's really, I would really let you know that the Public Works Department is extremely focused and having to be agile and diligent about consideration about which projects need which funding and when they become priorities because they receive funding from, say, NMDOT or the feds. And that's when you'll see a project come. So for instance, Bishop's Lodge Road, we probably would have put that project in our top 10 because we get so many complaints about the pedestrian and bicycle safety on that road and the speeding. But boy, it jumped to number 1 when DOT gave us $800,000 for design. So like this prioritization exercise has to be very, very dynamic. And we can give you priorities given what we understand about the landscape right now. But when the legislative session ends, we'll probably have a different set of priorities, right? Because some projects will have been funded. So I just wanted to make the committee aware of the very dynamic situation with capital projects and that, Public Works and of course, working with the governing body and the other departments is really staying abreast of the priorities based on a number of influences on that topic. Thank you, Chairman.
I think that is great feedback. And I want us to, I definitely recognize that if we have funding for something and it's highly needed, maybe that moves it to the top of the list. And that's something helpful for us as a committee as we meet to discuss what we're approving. Hey, this is top of the list because we have funding for it right now. These other ones that we'd love to do, we don't have the funding. Hard to prioritize that. And I recognize this may change every time we meet, but it gives us a sense for what's going on at the current time because you live and breathe it every day. So that's my opinion. I recognize that's not necessarily shared by everybody, but that's how I feel about it. Member Bechtel.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to
Oh, good.
reiterate.
I'm actually in a Zoom meeting on the Capitol.
Member Guerrero-Ortiz.
Yes, please.
I just wanted to reiterate the idea that the whole city is growing. It's not just parts of the city. It's all impacted. All the roads are impacted by the growth. I mean, even Paseo. So to slice that one so thinly seems not correct to me, and especially given how hard it is to get this committee to meet, how hard it is to get the money or to even know what the monies that we have. And so I just want to support staff in what they have presented. I mean, it's pretty obvious that parks are needed on the south side, and I think most of this is on the south side. So I just want it to be. I just want to follow some common sense. Yes, I get that ordinance and the state statute are specific, but I would also say that the city of Santa Fe is under a huge growth dynamism right now. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. And correct me if I'm wrong, this item doesn't have any new projects on it. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, that is correct.
So, again, we're not voting on adding anything here. It's already been part of this. We just don't have a new prioritization. Member Hamilton.
Yes, I totally understand what Ms. Wheeler is saying when she says that the city is growing and that we have pain points all over. No question, no question. However, my concern is that even though it's only 5% of the total, is it allowed? That's all. I just want to hear that. And when it comes to the parks list, I had the same question and I pulled up the Development Fees Act. And a lot of what we're looking for parks is, I think, equipment. Do we consider some of the things that we're purchasing equipment, because that's also on the list of items not payable by fee. And even though we may not be paying 100% out of this budget, is it allowed? I'd like to know more next time we meet.
Thank you for those comments. I think, okay, Member Conway.
Can we call the question?
Yeah. Let's roll call.
Mr. Chair, do we have a motion to table this?
I believe we had a motion and a second.
Okay.
I'm sorry, point of order. Stenographer, Martin, would you like the motion maker to restate the motion for you in the second?
Yes, oh no, I see it. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm getting confused with the other item. I apologize. Member Bechtel?
No to table.
Member Clow?
Yes.
Member Conway?
Yes to table.
Member Aguirre Ortiz? Member Guerrero Ortiz? Oh, she stepped away.
Stepped out.
Okay. Member Hamilton?
Yes to table.
Member O'Reilly?
Yes.
Member Salazar?
Yes.
Chair Lewis?
Yes.
Motion passes.
I just want to point out the comment that it is difficult for us to meet. I'm happy to meet as soon as we can. You know, I don't want us to be a gating item. So I'm sorry if this is probably frustrating for staff, but hopefully we can meet on a more regular basis, have a schedule going forward, and we'll have a plan for how to get through this. But just wanted to make that comment. Okay, table 83, action item 5C. Pulling that up. Let's see. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Burnett.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Chair people. Thank you very much for having me here this morning. I'm Sam Burnett. I'm the Facilities Division Director. Our submission really was on behalf of the Santa Fe Police Department. Joining us here today is also Deputy Chief Ben Valdez, who can speak in a little more detail on these items. But all that said, there are a total of 8 items, as you can see, that PD is interested in obtaining impact fees for. We've prioritized these and identified, 3 really important priorities for PD in the near future. Police Support Operations Office, they've recently relocated a portion of their operations to the Siringo complex. There are a number of upgrades to the facilities here that need to be made to accommodate their work over here at the Siringo complex. They also have the police vehicle lot. There's a need to build some structures for housing equipment and helping separate out, impounded vehicles from actual PD equipment. And then finally, at their professional standards buildings, we have some deferred ADA compliance issues that we are looking for funding to take care of. And in a nutshell, and with my limited knowledge of these items, that's what we're here for today. If you have any more specific questions or need any more information, again, Deputy Chief Valdez is here to help embellish the details or, expand on the details. Yeah, thank you.
Member O'Reilly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to thank Sam and staff for actually telling us which of these items are most important to them, which he did in his memo. So that's really helpful to me. Thank you for that, Sam. I have no other questions.
Thank you. I think the only question I have related to this is, can you speak to, this is what we talked about with the other projects, how this is related to expansion and growth within the city? especially for these top 3 priorities.
Absolutely, and maybe I'll start, and Chief Valdez, if you want to continue on after that, I think that'd be great. But I think in all of these cases, especially items number 1 and number 2 are really a reflection of the growth in Santa Fe and the growing demands and requirements that the police department has to meet. As they expand, as their operations grow throughout the city, they obviously need more office space, they need more equipment, they need better organization to better meet their demands throughout the city. I think so. It's on a superficial level, I think that's a good explanation. Maybe Deputy Chief Valdez can speak a little more specifically about how the need for the operations office here at Siringo came to be, and also a bit more about the vehicle lot and the professional standards building.
Thank you, Mr. Burnett. And Mr. Chair, to address those questions, just to put in perspective, our current headquarters building was built back in, it was finished back in 1984. Not to date myself, but I was born around that time. That was the last large building project we've done for the Santa Fe Police Department. We've had our record section there off of Siringo, and what we're seeing is there's a real challenge for us with providing services on the east side of Santa Fe as we get growth. So on the south side, that's where our headquarters is stationed at, but even with that location, it requires people to drive quite a distance to come get services in the police department. So as the growth of the city occurred, we still had that one headquarters building. That's also not a very good setup for us as well, because if something were to happen at that building due to age or wear, something as benign as even, the water having to go out for plumbing repairs, we have no fallback position to provide those services that are needed for our city. We saw this during COVID as well. We had a lot of businesses closed down. Many of our women officers were unable to use facilities on the north side because the business is being closed, and they had to come all the way from the north side down to our headquarters, which, depending what time of day it is, during the day on the swing shift can be about a 45-minute trip for them to make sure they can go use just a basic facility. So it's critical for us with our support operations section to have that location, because it has bathroom facilities, office facilities, and a lot of the equipment the officers have now, it's not conventional items that we think about like a pen and paper to take reports. We have technology, we have body-worn cameras that have to be charged, we have devices that need to be charged. So we need a good foothold in the heart of town to be able to have our people able to respond in a timely manner to these types of emergency situations, but also to refresh supplies as needed. The other challenge that exists as well is we've expanded our support operations section to provide a lot of law enforcement support, both with sworn and non-sworn staff. We see a big challenge now that we have speed monitoring devices, speed traffic trailers, motorcycles, bicycles. All this equipment currently is being held in a small storage, and some are being held in a motorcycle trailer, which is not the best way to do it. And it actually ages and deteriorates the equipment, and it's going to cost the city more. These units were a direct reflection of the growth that the city of Santa Fe had, the demands that the city had for improvement to address these situations, such as unsafe driving, speeding, and so on. So we can have those types of responses available for our staff. So just put in perspective, again, we have not had a police facility be expanded since 1984. Throughout our time, we have used ad hoc locations like a fire station off of Alameda, which we're no longer able to utilize as a north substation. At one point, we had an office at the Santa Fe Rail Depot that we utilized for our bike operations, but again, it wasn't a full service station. So a lot of the projects we're looking at is to expand on that to allow that type of service to be accessible to members of the public throughout our whole jurisdiction. Because as growth increases, again, it's going to become more and more challenging for people to come to our headquarters to get those types of services. So that will address our first 2 items. One being the support operations section building. The second one is going to be our vehicle lot. Currently, we've been going through a revamp of our evidence practices, and we've seen through an assessment and also through a professional analysis where they did an audit of our practices that we have our fleet vehicles, which are the vehicles that our staff use, and we have evidence vehicles that we have, and they're commingling, which is not the best practice. That is actually not a good way to do business. So there's a need for us to separate the two. In assessing our facility that we have for our vehicle storage, That'd be more well suited for evidence holding for vehicles. And we have another lot that we utilize for our forfeiture program, which would be able to be utilized as our fleet storage location. But it would need some improvements with buildings to be able to store the equipment that we need for our fleet managed issue to our staff, to maintain the fleet that we have as well. And again, with those items, those are things that need to be maintained, and they have to be taken into account for growth. As the city grows, there's a need for equipment, there's a need for staff. So we need to have that stuff readily available to continue to provide that high level of service to our people that we need to go out there and provide that service. On the third item is our professional standards division building. In an assessment that we looked at, again, our approach is we want people to be comfortable and accessible to be able to come forward with their grievances to the police department and provide those concerns to us. In looking at that building, it's an aged building. It was in fact utilized as our south station prior to the construction of our current police headquarters prior to 1984. And again, it's just an aged building. It needs to get some improvements. It doesn't have an accessibility for a wheelchair ramp to get up into. It doesn't have enough room to give a wide enough berth on the side that does allow for a point to come in with someone who is wheelchair bound. So it needs some improvements. We don't want to get a violation with that. And we've been seeing again this day and age is people are more willing to come forward with concerns. So we want to make sure that we can greet them, that we don't create any barriers or any type of appearance of a barrier saying, hey, well, they didn't have accessibility for me to come into the building, and here's what it was. So those, based on what we're looking at, are the three parts that we have at this point. We have a lot of other items that we've listed to look and have on our strategic plan to replace and upgrade buildings and facilities that we need as growth continues. But these are the ones that we present before you guys. And at this point, I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you. That answers my questions. So appreciate that. Ms. Fagali?
I just wanted to note that these fees can be used to add capacity if it's to serve a growing population. It's not only for new projects. So I'm sure staff can try to clarify what exactly these are being used for, but that is an acceptable use of funds.
Great. Thank you. Member Conway?
Just noting there is no allocation request on our agenda, correct? I'm not missing that.
Not correct. Today that is not.
And so yeah, I appreciate the priorities, because as we all can see from our table, we don't have nearly enough money in the budget to fund any of these items. Maybe we do, maybe we don't. I don't know. So I guess we can take that under advisement. If there is an allocation request that comes forward, we'll have better numbers and we can choose one of the three priorities that would be most appropriate for this fund to support. Yes. That's just my comment, I guess.
Great. I think if there aren't any other comments on this, wonder if we need a motion to approve this updated table. Is that what we're looking for?
Yes. Oh.
Is there a motion? Member O'Reilly, you have your hand raised.
I would move to approve action item 5C.
I will second that motion.
Thank you. Stenographer Martin for the roll call.
Member Bechtel? Member Bechtel? Member Clow?
Yes.
Member Conway?
Yes.
Member Guerrero Ortiz?
Yes.
Member Hamilton?
Yes.
Member O'Reilly?
Yes.
Member Salazar?
Yes.
Chair Lewis?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Member
Thank
Conway?
you very much. Happy holidays, everyone.
Thank
Just
you.
A quick clarifying question. When all the monies get commingled in one fund, can we go beyond the budget item we have, for instance, say for police and fire, by drawing from roads, or do we have a strict partition between those funds? Yeah, strict partition. Okay.
Yeah, you have a strict partition. You have to stick with it.
Okay. We're through 5C. These remaining 5D, E, and F are somewhat related to the tables we just tabled. I wonder the best approach here. Should we go through each of these? It's worth going through each of these? Okay. 5D, turning back over to Ms. Glorioso Mas to talk about the $275,000 for the 5 federally funded projects.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we are requesting $275,000 for road impact fees for 4 projects. But I think because the committee did not approve Table 80, we cannot move forward with Bishop's Lodge Road reconstruction and Guadalupe Bridge rehabilitation, but we can move forward with Henley Ridge Road reconstruction and Paseo del Sol West extension because these 2 projects were included in the former Table 80. So for those 2 projects, we are requesting $62,500 matching funds. And for the trail impact fees, we can move forward with these 2 projects because they were included in Table 81. It's for Acequia Trail from Rufina to San Felipe for $43,680. $43,680, and for Cañada Rincon Trail, $131,040, for a total of $174,720. That's all, Mr. Chair. I stand for questions. Thank you.
Member Conway.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the funding for these projects with the exclusion of the Bishop's Lodge project that is not currently on the Table 80.
And Guadalupe Bridge, I think, is not included as well.
And Guadalupe Bridge.
Okay. Motion on the floor. Is there a second? Member O'Reilly.
Second.
Okay, any other comments? Stenographer Martin to roll call.
Member Bechtel?
Yes, sorry, I had to step away.
It's okay. Member Clow?
Yes.
Member Conway?
Yes.
Member Guerrero Ortiz?
Yes.
Member Hamilton?
Yes.
Member O'Reilly?
Yes.
Member Salazar?
Yes.
Chair Lewis?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Awesome. Thank you. Sorry. Let's go to action item 5E. The request to reassign. Sorry.
Mr. Chair, there's a second request under D.
Oh, I see. Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Was that motion Member Conway made only for the road projects, not for the parks and trails?
So he's actually, they're both taken care of by the one motion, correct? Okay.
I thought it though. Okay. So now on to 5E. Request to reassign $800,000 of park impact fee funds for construction of Swan Park to road impact fees. Ms. McDonald.
Chairman, Regina Wheeler, Public Works Director. I'm here to represent this item since Director McDonald had to be in another meeting.
Thank you.
Chairman, does Member O'Reilly need to speak first?
Sure. Member O'Reilly.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Regina. I just would like to point out that for many of the reasons we've already discussed, that Member Clow and Member Hamilton discussed and Member Guerrero Ortiz discussed today, I don't believe that these funds can be reallocated. The Development Fees Act is very clear about what kind of roads you can spend roadway impact fees on, and they are only arterial roads and collectors, not roads that only go to a park. And so I just want to point that out. I think it's fine to spend park impact fee monies to build a park access road. But I don't think that we can switch these over to road impact fee funds. So having said that, I don't know how the staff feels about proceeding.
Ms. Wheeler, do you want to respond to that?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Member O'Reilly. This is, I have reached out to City Attorney, Assistant City Attorney Patricia Fagali, who's in our meeting here and supporting us with the act and interpretation of that. This is a significant roadway that goes to Swan Park, and I actually haven't evaluated whether it qualifies as a collector roadway. It's not us. It's a $1 million extension into a pretty highly utilized area. So I can check on that. I did want to also maybe take a moment to address some of the questions that the committee has raised prior to in the discussion today about the balance available in each of the funds. And I did note that Romello Glorioso Moss has actually been tracking the road impact fees allocations since October 2019, and the corresponding balance of what was this very significant balance at the time. And I see Romello doesn't have her video on, but I wonder if it might be helpful for the committee to hear what her reconciliation of the balance of the road fund is.
Didn't we do that earlier? I thought
Yes.
I did hear.
Did she provide that?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I must have been while I was gone. And what's the understanding of the balance? Is it sufficient for the 800,000? Should we find
Yes.
this roadway to qualify?
Over 2 million, as I recall.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. Sorry to have missed that and rehash it again. So this is a really important project. And as you can see, the next item on the agenda is $800,000 to rehabilitate the tennis courts, which are under great demand these days due to the growth in the city. And that is the reason that we need to move this road over to impact fees so that we can fund those really needed improvements to the tennis courts to meet a higher demand these days. And so I might, possibly a condition of affirmation that this is an eligible expense under the act could be considered. And I don't know if Assistant City Attorney Fagali has anything to add to that.
I don't have anything to add right now.
Okay, Member Clow.
I had a question, I'm sorry, but I wasn't called on. Backing up on the last, on the road improvement, are we gonna lose any of those federal funds by not approving the Guadalupe Bridge and the other project that we didn't approve?
Bishop's Lodge.
Bishop's Lodge, or can we, is there time to address that at the next meeting? And I'm sorry to back up, but I didn't want to interrupt you.
I'm sorry for not calling on you.
That's okay.
Ms. Glorioso Moss, do you have comments on that?
The funding agreement was approved by the NMDOT last month. And according to the funding agreement, we have to hire the consultant by January or at the latest February. So without these matching funds, we cannot award the contract to the consultant of Bishop's Lodge and Guadalupe.
And the city doesn't have other funds available to sign the contract?
No.
So do we need to go back and see if we can address whether or not they are appropriate impact fees?
A point of order, I would guess we'd need to go back and approve the table as a first item.
That's correct.
Able to then even
Right.
vote on.
But could we address those two and see if we can pull the facts together that would perhaps establish that they are appropriate impact fees. Expenditures.
Ms. Martin?
As a point of order, you need to move forward on the agenda that you have first. After you can't go back at this point, you need to move forward on the agenda after you deal with the last two items. Then if Member Clow wants to make a motion to revisit certain agenda items, she can do that, and she would have to have a supermajority of the members to be able to agree to go back. So that's the way that would work.
Okay, next time I'll interrupt you, Chair.
Please do. Okay. I think there's a number of other hands raised. We'll revisit if we can revisit later. Member Guerrero Ortiz.
Thank you. I would say that I agree wholeheartedly with what Matt O'Reilly said. From my perspective, this is $800,000 for a road and parking along that road. And I don't know how that could be justified under the arterial roads task or under arterial roads. And, you know, I believe this is a driveway. I totally wholeheartedly will support almost anything coming associated with Swan Park, frankly, and coming from the parks fund, though, impact fund. And I cannot support it coming from the roads fund. I just don't think that that's appropriate. And I think it would be wrong for this committee to do so. So if there's a motion, I'd certainly like to, you know, I would make a motion to deny this request.
Is there a second? Number of hands raised. Member Hamilton?
Are you
I'll
seconding? Okay.
I'll second it.
Okay, are there comments on this? I recognize Member O'Reilly and Member Salazar have had their hands raised. No. Okay, I think if there's no comments, then let's do a roll call.
Okay.
Member Bechtel?
So the motion is to deny this request?
That's correct.
I vote no.
Member Clow?
Yes.
Member Conway? Member Conway?
Unmute. Sorry, that was no.
No. Member Guerrero Ortiz?
Yes.
Member Hamilton?
Yes.
Member O'Reilly?
Yes.
Member Salazar?
Yes.
Chair Lewis?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, in light of that, I think that makes item 5F impossible. Is that correct?
Thank you. Yes, Chairman.
You will need to vote. You will need to vote on that.
Okay, so then is there a motion on 5F? Members that,
Mr. Chair, I was just going to say I need to leave here in a few minutes. I need to take my son to school for his final.
Understood. Sorry, this has run long. I know this has been a long meeting.
You will still have a quorum, Chair Lewis.
Thank you. Is there a motion? Member Conway?
Yeah, I'll make a motion. Wait, can I make a motion to table this item, or are we making a motion to deny it? Let me, if I may, I was going to vote no on this anyway, and I'm a tennis player, and I seriously, I can't play at some of these parks because they're so dangerous. But I don't think that our fund is the appropriate thing to resurface tennis courts. And in the write-up of this item, it says we want new tennis courts, but then when I read deeper, everything was resurfaced tennis courts. So I had questions about this. I'm like, are these new tennis courts? Because a new tennis court at a new park, I could see, okay, that's good parks, that's good investment in our fund. But these are, the parks just they got a plan for these courts to wear out. They didn't wear out because a bunch of people ran around on them. They run out, they wore out because they wear out and they need to be resurfaced from time to time. So I definitely thought this was I voted for the road, but I thought this was a totally inappropriate use of our fund to resurface tennis courts. And I'm going to be killed for this by my tennis friends.
Member Conway, are you making a motion?
Yeah, I made a motion to table this item.
To table it, not to deny it? Okay.
Is there a second on the floor? Member Guerrero Ortiz, is that a second?
Yeah, I'll second, but I'll state what I am finding that the statement questionable. Maybe I didn't read all the details because the agenda says this is for 6 new tennis courts.
Yeah, but if you open that the document, member Gutierrez Ortiz, I think it's resurfacing them.
Chairman, members of the committee, if I might, it's complete rehabilitation, excavation and replacement of the pavement of existing courts.
Well, I do second the tabling anyway, because I think that there was a funding issue. So that's why I'm recommending, or I'm going for tabling.
Great. There's a second. Stenographer Martin, can you do a roll call?
Member Bechtel?
Yes.
Member Clow?
Yes.
Member Conway?
Yes.
Member Guerrero Ortiz?
Yes.
Member Hamilton?
Yes.
Member O'Reilly?
Yes.
Member Salazar?
Yes, and with that, Mr. Chair, I'm going to excuse myself from the rest of the meeting, and y'all have a happy holidays. I'll see you.
Happy holidays.
Chair Lewis?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Mr. Burke, you have a question here? Or you have your hand raised?
Chair, normally when we table something, we're given direction by members of the committee or by the motion maker on what they'd like to see, because when we're tabling something, we would revisit it at some point. So what is the direction of the committee that they would like to see from staff now that this is tabled?
I think, well, member Conway, you made the motion.
No, I think it was just that we will revisit this item. My thought was that we would revisit this item when the funding issue is worked out on the Swan Parks Road. That was my thought.
Thank you. That brings clarity.
Okay, we're through the agenda, maybe. Are there, and we've done 6A, are there any other matters from the floor?
May I, Mr. Chair? I think
Member Conway.
I just wanted to say, should we state in the form of a motion, or did we do that already, that we are going to send a letter to city attorney, city staff, asking for some of these clarifying parts on the balance of our funds? Do we need to do that?
I don't know that we need a formal motion, but I'm happy to communicate, and I would urge all of us to communicate with our counselors, because I think the more we can request it, the more likely we are to get any action. I know that the staff is working hard to get all the information we need. Ms. Martin?
If you are going to do a letter from the committee to the city attorney, then that needs to be approved by a motion and a vote of the committee.
Okay. Do we want it from the committee as a whole, or do we want from each member?
I would make a motion that the letter comes from this committee via Chair Lewis, and that perhaps we all could help craft that letter.
Okay.
Unless that, maybe it is easier for us just to all write to our sponsoring counselors.
I do worry about the time it takes to go back and forth and wordsmith from 10 of us.
I will write my sponsoring counsel.
Member Conway, are you withdrawing your motion?
I was asking if I should make a motion, but I'm now not making a motion.
Okay. Member Hamilton?
Yes, if I'll go either way, but I love sending letters to all of our counselors and city employees. So as we send our letters, are we allowed to share them with each other? Because it's important to use the same language over and over and over again so that it sinks in. But city attorney, are we allowed to share those letters?
You would possibly be running afoul of the Open Meetings Act if you were to.
Right, okay.
So unless it is something that's coming from the committee, I would not recommend that.
And I think we've all heard the language here today of what we are hoping to get out of it is the data we need to be able to make our decisions related to the actual account balances in this, but hopefully that's enough for all of us to operate with.
Okay, so we need data. Got it.
Is there anything else from staff that we can be more helpful guidance, be more transparent on what we need or what we're asking for?
I think you've been, Mr. Chair, I think you guys, the entire committee has been very straightforward with what they wanted back in May and again today. So hopefully we can deliver for you next time.
Thank you. Ms. Wheeler, anything else on that?
Thank you so much, Chairman. Members of the committee, I would agree with Planner Logston about that and appreciate the guidance and the sort of laser beam focus on how to make things clear and approvable by this committee. But I would ask, could we establish another meeting date that is very soon so that we might rescue some of these projects?
Yeah, I would like to do that as well. I'll get to you, Member Bechtel and Member O'Reilly. Could we, I don't know what the best way to do this is, but first week in January or first couple weeks in January would be a great time if people are available or try to become available. Is it possible to have the staff send around a doodle poll so we don't have to waste time on this going through that?
Mr. Chair, I was asked to do that once by Gayla, and there's some strange kind of security issue with using my work email to do this, and I was unable to do it. So if another staff member can, great, but
or even just send out 5 times that work or that works for the staff, and hopefully we can coalesce around one of those. Okay. Maybe I'll put that in your to-do list, Mr. Larson. Thank you.
Sure.
Member Bechtel.
I just wanted to find out how we as a committee are going to determine whether these projects are growth related or not. I mean, who is the arbiter of that decision? Is it just this board, or is there, I mean, there's more guidance, because I'm hearing conflicting information. I mean, I can read the ordinance myself or the state statute, but I guess I would like to have city attorney or someone that's really going to make that decision.
Chair, committee members, thank you for the question. That really is your decision. We bring the request forward to you, and you are supposed to evaluate it against what the state statute allows for. So it really is the decision of this committee to make a recommendation to the governing body, and ultimately the decision comes from the governing body.
Thank you. And so I guess it will be up to the staff then to make it really clear how this relates to growth management.
Yes.
Is that correct? I mean, okay, thank you.
In the past, Ms. Bechtel, there were very clear requests of here's what we're wanting and here's why it relates to growth. And if we can just explicitly state that, that helps us as a committee to approve it. If it's sort of vague and we have to come up with and guess at why it is, especially it's a public meeting, that's not a good look for us. So that's I think why with those 2 tables we requested a little more transparency on those items. Member O'Reilly.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. I agree what was just said. That would really be helpful in memos. But again, not all things are eligible to have impact fees applied to them by the statute, the state statute, and our own ordinance adopting the Development Fees Act. For instance, in my time, long years working at the city, we never brought roadway projects in front of the CIAC unless they were arterials or collector roads, period. Because the statute is very, very clear. Roadway facilities means arterial or collector streets, period. Not driveways, not access roads, not local lanes, not anything like that. And there's a really good legal basis for that. So I would, that can be found in the statute and in the commentary to the statute. So I would just ask that not only do we have staff provide justification for these kinds of requests in terms of growth, but also it would be nice if, since we are expending funds and there's a state law in place requiring us, putting these requirements on us, that the city attorney from time to time either, train staff or at least review the memos. Because it's real clear to me that we're asking for some things here that we cannot under state law approve. It's not that the projects aren't great. They're all great. Regina, you've got amazing things planned. It's just that we have a very small limited function in the recommendation of impact fees. If the city can find other ways to fund these projects, great, but we shouldn't be funding them with projects that were prohibited from using impact fees for by law. Thank you.
Good commentary, and I appreciate you bringing that up because your experience is super helpful here. Member Hamilton?
Yes, does the city, like land use and departments, have access to granular level 2020 census data? The reason I ask is that growth in Santa Fe is like a buzzword, and it's easy for everybody to agree that, oh, Santa Fe is growing. But I've spent a lot of time on the census.gov website and am having a hard time finding census data like by zip. Because when we see future analyses and we use the word growth, I would like to hear, how is that growth justified? Because we know that some parts of the city are exploding and then other parts perhaps not. And I think if roadway projects are going to come to us, that I'd also like to see traffic counts, with comparisons to whenever the last traffic counts were done, as part of understanding growth. Is that possible? So I guess my question is, do you all as staff have access to granular census data that can be compared to 2010 census?
Commissioner, yeah, we do have access to such things. It's going to be really hard for me to put together a meeting for like first or second week of January. I've kind of given my all to this department for the last several months and not taken any personal time. I finally have some time off around Christmas, and that's basically when I need to be putting together this next meeting. So I will do my best, but I've kind of given everything I have for quite a few months now, and I'm burnt out.
Ms. Wheeler.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you so much. And thank you, Lee, for jumping in at this last minute with your last thread. As I'm sure you all can appreciate, the city is experiencing the massive vacancy rate that the entire country is, and it is extremely intense. It was especially intense before the election. And we're sort of all in a state of just trying to serve the public as best we can. We have such high commitment to high quality work, and so it is a really challenging time. So thank you, Lee. And I'd like to offer public works support to land use, as Director Klug indicated in the beginning. This is a real team effort. We have our hands on the steering wheel of a lot of the pieces of this puzzle. And we'd really like to offer our assistance with creating that January. So I've actually already put a meeting on the calendar for Monday for the staff here today to meet, to strategize about how we'll meet the request from this committee moving forward. Everything from information that's provided to justification to, reviewing ourselves with city attorney and all the nice recommendations that have been made. So we'll be working on that. I did want to say with the request from member O'Reilly, and I think actually member maybe Guerrero Ortiz, whoever just said that we should provide traffic counts for road improvements and justification probably from census data. That is actually pretty straightforward for big projects like Guadalupe that just asked for funding, that as you could see, and for even Bishop's Lodge Road, certainly MPO has performed all of that work to get these roads on our transportation planning lists, and that would be available. That's why they're on the list. For parks projects, we could work with land use on the census, but that might be a little bit trickier. We'll take a look at what we can do, but we'll definitely take your input and sort of up the level of justification that we provide in our memos and review of the projects before they come before you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Wheeler. And I would just say use, as Member Hamilton suggested, that data to help the case, right? So it doesn't always have to be included, but where helpful and available, let's do it. Okay, Member Clow.
Yes, I just wanted to tell staff that I appreciate the amount of work that they've done over the last number of months. I sit on the Planning Commission. Since our last CIAC meeting, there's been 10 or 11 Planning Commission meetings with many new projects. So, I mean, I've seen land use staff hard at work. So I appreciate what Lee and Regina are saying and really understand, as in most businesses right now, labor is short. So I appreciate that. I had a question. If we're looking at a meeting in January, are we just looking at the 2 projects that we might lose funding on if we don't approve them? And really nothing more, I would take it, because staff really doesn't have the time to do more than that.
Chairman, if I might, and maybe Director Klug has input on this, but I think we might try to address some of the questions on the other items that were tabled as well and see if that would be possible. But we would work with the chair to develop an agenda for that meeting that was achievable and met the committee's approval.
Yes, let's prioritize the couple tables and the items that need to be approved or we lose funding. So that would be my priority. And if we can get other stuff done in time, great. Okay, Mr. Klug.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I agree with everything that Director Wheeler just noted as far as working together and the items for the next meeting. I would like to recommend a possible slot, maybe the same time slot on February 10th. I believe that's the next reasonable date. The staff could reasonably pull everything together that we've discussed, get through the holidays, and also get through some of these hiring challenges, hopefully, and get people in place. I'd really like to have the new CIAC planner at the next meeting as well. Hopefully we can get that person hired by that date.
Is that, I'm fine with that as long as that's enough time in advance of these couple projects that we were discussing.
Well, it's really challenging because I don't want to dwell on all of the capacity issues and challenges that we have, because I know nobody wants to hear it, but nevertheless, they're true. And I would note that they're dire. So I understand Lee's concern. It may sound, maybe inappropriate from your perspective, but I think from his perspective, it is appropriate. And from my perspective, I understand it. And I feel the same way, but I wouldn't quite frame it that way. Anyway, having said that, I believe that February 10th is a much more reasonable target date than any time in January.
Okay. I know I didn't mean to stress anyone out. I'm not trying to create work.
Oh, no, Yeah, it's nice. I apologize. It's not taken that way. I just felt like I needed to, set some.
Great.
Yeah, thank you.
I just wanted to make it clear, at least for me and hopefully other members of this committee, whenever you guys are ready, and I think we'd all be happy to jump on as soon as possible. Of course, as long as you're ready to meet. I don't want to meet and stress everyone out and not have anything ready to go. So I'm fine with that first or second week in February.
Well, if I may, I believe we all understand the urgency here. So I think we'd all rather do it sooner than later, but I just want to give staff enough time.
Yep. Ms. Gloriosa Mas.
Mr. Chair, can we revisit 5A and 5D as suggested by Member Hamilton, I think, or Member Clow earlier at this meeting?
I have concern. I think that we have to go through this whole process of the table and adding it to the table and making sure that it fits the needs. So it feels a little premature, in my opinion, to bring it up today, and hopefully we can do that early in 2022, unless others feel differently. I also have a hard stop coming up just in my calendar, so I'm sorry to do that.
Thank you.
Do other members disagree? Are we good to wait until early next year? Okay. I think we're Member Bechtel.
Sorry, I just wanted to be clear that, so we're losing funding if we don't approve these projects until February.
We cannot, sorry, Member Bechtel, we cannot hire the consultant to start January or February because we don't have the whole funding. And I was
delay it a little bit.
Sorry?
Is it just a delay in that you could then hire them in February
No,
or March?
sorry, because this is TPF. The requirement of the funding is this should be shovel-ready projects. And we are working on the contracts at this moment, and we need that matching funds. And I was thinking if the committee can just consider the Bishop's Lodge Road to include in table 80, that will be good for us to move forward with the contract and the project start in January or February at the latest.
Ms. Wheeler.
Chairman, thank you so much. I'm sorry to put the committee in this position. Thank you so much for your concern for this, but I guess I would say that I think that given the number of issues on the table and the discomfort of some of the members without having more information of moving forward and really starting to follow a very crisp process, I'd like to propose that Ramel and I put our heads together to make sure that we save this funding and do whatever we need so that that February 10th date will either be sufficient to provide the gap funding that we're seeking, or by then we won't need it because we will have gone someplace else to get it. So it won't be on the CIAC for us losing $800,000 of funding for Bishop's Lodge Road. So we'll take that on, Ramela, you and I, and then we'll give an update to the CIAC in February.
Okay, thank you for that clarity. With that in mind, I think this completes the agenda. Is there a motion to adjourn?
You don't need a motion to adjourn in the committees. You just adjourn the meeting, Mr. Chair.
Okay, are any objections to that, or I'm going to do it? All right. Meeting